more Starbucks. I did a couple plays right after that. I did a little independent film, and then I did this movie called Twister. And while I was in Ponca City, Oklahoma, Jonathan and I had kept in touch, and he called me at one point while I was out there. One of the highlights of my time in Ponca City was getting a call from Jonathan where he played for me over the phone a version of What You Want, the song that he'd written for me. He'd been looking for somebody for Mark and Roger to sing together, and he had my voice in mind, and so he wrote that song. And that was a huge honor that not only that he'd written something with my voice in mind, but that he also had shared it with me. I found out later that he often would write songs and call his friends up and play them for them over the phone, including sometimes like at 3 in the morning. He'd be so excited, he'd written the song at 3 in the morning, he'd call his friend and he'd be like, what? He'd be like, listen to the song, and like, Jonathan, he's like, no, you have to listen to the song! So anyway, I still felt privileged by it. But that summer, after I got back from Ponca City, Jonathan got invited to present a couple selections from the show at this evening where opera companies were presenting selections from their seasons. And they thought it was cool that Red, by the way, was, you may or may not know, is based on the opera La Bohème, the Puccini opera. At least in part, directly inspired by it. So they thought, that's cool that there's a rock opera version happening, and why don't you come and sing some songs from it, present. And we didn't have a Roger at the time, because we knew that we weren't going to use the same Roger from the workshop, because he was a little too old, and his voice wasn't quite rock and roll enough. So Jonathan asked me if I would do it for this event. And that was the first and last time that I sang. But we did another day in Light My Candle, especially Light My Candle, which is so similar to the scene from Puccini. Except in Puccini, Mimi just simply wants her candle lit, and Red wants her candle lit so she can shoot up. But anyway, so there's I want to actually read a little bit of the text here, because it says a little more concisely than I can say it in my rambles. But I need to wet my lips. I'm still dehydrated from the long flight. So this is again the summer of 1995, and we're in Soho for our little performance of Light My Candle on Another Day. We sat through some mild-mannered art songs and excerpts from new folk operas, and then it was our turn. I had no idea what this crowd was going to make of our noisier version of opera music, but before I could find out, Jonathan got up in front of the small audience and spoke. His head tilted to one side like a puppy, his hands animated, his voice mellow and clear. I've always loved La Bohème and Puccini's other work, he said, and I've also always loved Billy Joel and Elton John and The Who, and I've also always loved Stephen Sondheim and the medium of musical theater. And I wanted to write something that could incorporate all of those influences. Well, a few years ago, several of my friends came to me and told me that they were HIV positive, and then a couple of them died. And as I was coming to terms with this, I realized I had to write something in response. And so I began to work on Rent. La Bohème was a perfect starting point. Instead of Puccini's Artist's Garret in Paris, I placed my characters in a loft in the East Village. Instead of consumption, my characters became infected with AIDS. Rodolfo, the poet, became Roger, the lead singer of a failed rock band called the Well Hungarians. Jonathan smiled as the audience laughed. Marcello, the painter, became Mark, the documentary filmmaker. And Puccini's Mimi became my Mimi Marquez, a heroin-addicted S&M dancer. More like it. I'm very honored to be asked to be a part of tonight's presentation. I dedicate this work to my friends that I've lost. Thank you. There was a smattering of applause, and we began. I'd never heard Jonathan speak at such length about the origins of the show, and as I sang, the power of his words resonated through me. I invited Jonathan to my birthday party at the end of October, and I was happy that he came and stayed a long time, socializing and drinking and laughing. I didn't get to talk to him much that night, but after he left, my friend Kevin came up to me and said, "Who was that guy?" "Who, Jonathan?" "Yeah. What's with him?" "What do you mean?" "Well, we were talking, right? And I asked him what he did for a living, and he told me with a He said, "I'm the future of musical theater." Really? Yeah, dude, totally. I mean, what is that about? Maybe a crazy, bold, wild thing to say. Maybe he's right, I said. Kevin took a swig of his beer. Yeah, but still. Would anyone want to admit that? Come on. On December 18th, the night before rehearsals began, Jonathan hosted what he called a peasant's feast, a potluck dinner for the cast and crew at his apartment. When I got there, he pulled me aside. "I want you to meet the guy playing Roger. His name's Adam Pascal. We're really excited about him. He's never done anything on stage before, but he's got an amazing voice. He can really sing." "Great," I said, and Jonathan took me to him. "Never done anything? Not anything? This should be interesting," I thought. "Adam," Jonathan said. "This is Anthony. Anthony Adam." "Hey, nice to meet you," Adam said, and grabbed and shook my hand vigorously. If Jonathan hadn't told me that this guy was playing Roger, I never would have predicted it. His disposition was too outgoing and friendly, and the combination of his dyed blonde hair in a Caesar cut, his close-cropped dirty blonde beard, and his outfit, a forest green sweatshirt with a medieval-style lace-up collar underneath denim overalls, made him seem to me more like one of Robin Hood's merry men than an ex-junkie wannabe rock star. But I trusted Jonathan. I knew how long they'd sought a good Roger. I looked forward to hearing him sing. When it was time for dinner, we took our seats in mismatched chairs along two long tables that had been set up, and Jonathan rose, clinking his glass so he could make a toast. His head was tilted like it had been at the opera event, but his voice was much softer and his body much more still as he spoke. "I invited you all here because every year at Christmas time I have what I call a peasant's feast. Since a lot of my friends and I don't have very much money, it's hard for some of us to go home and be with our families at the holidays. So we began this tradition of feeding each other and bringing each other a little holiday cheer. Well, this year I wasn't sure what I was going to do because rehearsals were about to begin and I wanted to do something to mark that occasion, but I also didn't want to break tradition and not have a peasant's feast. I'm so grateful to the New York Theater Workshop and to all of you who are part of this show. This is one of the greatest things that's ever happened in this production together. It's been a very long time coming. I wrote this show about my life, about the lives of my friends, and some of my friends are gone, and I really miss them. I guess I just wanted to say that you all are going to bring my friends to life, and I wanted to thank you for that. I wanted to thank you all for being my new friends. And I think I mentioned at the top of this, I've been working in this for many years, and I had never experienced a writer being so welcoming and personal in what he had to share, and also just literally saying we were now a part of his world. That was a very special moment for all of us in the piece. And the next day we went into rehearsal and we started again by singing Seasons of Love. And there were only three of us who had continued on with the production. Myself, Daphne Rubin-Vega, who played Mimi, and Gilles Chiasson, who was the original Will I soloist, and Squeegee Man. And the three of us, we were sort of like in on this big secret that we got to witness the rest of the new cast discovering, which was the beauty of this song, and then on day after day, and the power of the show. And there was a lot of it that had been rewritten. There were entirely new songs that were part of the show. Some things had been cut, and shifted around, and everything felt better. It was all, One Song Glory. It was the same. It had been the same melody in the earlier version, but the lyric was entirely different. Instead of One Song Glory, in the older version, it was called Right Brain, where Roger's literally trying to find the creative side of his brain, which to me is not quite as powerful as trying to write one song before he's gone. So those were the kinds of changes that Jonathan made. So it was a very thrilling rehearsal process. And I kept saying to all my friends, I think it's going to be an event. I think it's going to make a splash. But I had no idea exactly how much of a splash.